Monday, December 15th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, portable words.
Let's do this. You know, I'm pretty good with the softwares. You know, that's sort of what I do. You know, make softwares. But for many moons, you know, the physical bits, the electronics have sort of, you know, mystified. You know, it's like I can stick a video card in an AGP slot, and I understand, you know, the abstracted metaphors for how these technologies work. And when I understand on a fundamental level that they're, you know, pins and electricity, and the electricity goes on and it goes off, and there's like these square waves, you know, if it's at 5 volts, it's 1, and if it's 0 volts, it's 0, and that whole thing.
But I'm guessing if someone handed you a pile of resistors and such, and said, without Google, make a flip-flop.
Yeah, it's like, I know PV equals NRT, but if you give me a calculator, that even though I know that, it won't help me for shit, because I don't know what...
Well, you're stuck already.
I only know what the V is. I don't know what the N, R, T, or P's are.
The problem is, what'll stop most people is the lost art of looking at a resistor and knowing the resistance.
See, I know that there are colors and that they mean something, right? And I know that those colors match up with a number of ohms. I could not tell you which one of those letters in the equation is the ohms. So that I'm sort of lost.
I almost feel worse because I was kind of a hobbyist. When I say hobbyist, I'm
like,
talking
I can make a circuit. Like, I know the electricity goes from the, you know, the positive to the ground and the whole.
Well, no, the electrons come out of the negative.
Yeah, but you know, you connect it's a circuit. It goes in a circle. I know how it works, right? But it, you know, I can't actually do it, you know, even though I worked with like James, who does this for a living, for like, you know, I guess 20 weeks, and I didn't learn enough. I mean, I learned, but not enough to actually do anything. Basically, the extent of my electronics was, you know, I wrote some C code that turned one pin on the motherboard like on, and I connected a thing to it so I could detect. Like, I could detect if it was a 1 or a 0, but that's basically software. I didn't actually do any electronics. Right? Everyone else did all that.
You know, I feel like I'm kind of in a worse situation because I used to be really into that. Like in middle school and elementary school, I was soldering stuff all over the place, and in science,
I know.
Olympiad,
I was soldering stuff at summer camp, but
I made like these gigantic.
I completely forgot how to do it.
Like I made an alarm system for my bedroom.
I also made an alarm system with 2 buttons.
Oh, see, mine wasn't buttons. Mine actually was, if the circuit was broken, it went off.
Well, the button was broken. The circuit was broken by a button.
See, mine was just, I wired it into the door frame.
Well, see, mine, I made it, and it was sort of loose. So, right? And one button was sort of like the arming button in it. It was one of those clicky ones, like it locks in. So if you lock that button in, then it was armed. And if you unlocked it, it was off. There was also a power switch, right? And then there was a very loose button. It was like one of those silent sort of, you know, it would get pushed if you like tapped it a little bit.
Yep.
And so if it got pushed past a certain point, it would cut it, and then the alarm would go off.
Mine was set so there was basically a current going across where the door is and the window. And if the voltage...
Oh, you did? I mean, I could have done the same exact thing, just, you know, by taking the wires off, getting longer wires, and putting different switches on
instead of using switches, I set it up to where if the voltage dropped across that whole wire...
Yeah, I could have just used, like, magnet switches, you know, where the magnets are close to each other, but then when they move up, it cuts it, and that's it, you know?
Yeah, but do you remember how to make a circuit where if you lose signal on one wire, the other wire activates?
No, when I made this thing, I was in summer camp, and I had a little chart, and, you know, even though we even made the boards there, like, we drew on the boards with a magic marker, and they were just copper, and then they put them in acid for us, and then they came out, and then, you know, the traces were
we didn't
left
get
on
to do
there.
that. I just had piles of breadboards that I periodically broke.
See, I could use a breadboard to practice some soldering on.
Because I remember very specifically, I was in... It's soldering.
I got taught by an Australian guy.
I was in, like, 3rd grade.
And then I forgot.
I was soldering something together, and I was following this diagram, and the friendly gnome I knew who taught me how to solder and taught me how to do all this stuff. No, but this man was the closest thing to a gnome that the real world has ever seen. Him and his whole family were gnomes. They lived in a house that was nothing more than a giant engineering project.
They lived in a tree.
They were all
and they
engineers.
rode on a...
Him and his wife and his daughter.
He had a big, tall, red triangle hat.
Him, his wife, and his daughter were all engineers for a living. Him and his wife both had doctorates in engineering.
I forget what David the Gnome rode around on. Fuck.
This is the guy who would hand me 2 wires and say, "You may feel a shock. Don't let go.
You may feel small pain.
You may feel small pain. Do
Right.
not let go." But I remember I was soldering something together, and he's like, "Can you read a schematic?" And I'm like, yes, I can. And he's like, really? So he shows me a schematic. He's like, does this look like what you think a schematic is? And I was like, no, I'm using this. And he's like, that's a diagram. This is a schematic. Sit down, boy, and you're going to learn how electronics actually work.
So I went and, there's this Arduino thing, right? Which is basically like this open source board. And there are plenty of other like boards and chips you can get that you can program stuff on. There's like basic stamps and all these other things, right? And they're basically chips that are really easy to program. You connect it to your computer with a serial port, you write some software, you push a button, the software goes over to the chip, and then the chip is connected to a board, and then there's like some pins on the board, and you can program whether they go on or off. And then there's some other ones that are inputs, so you can detect whether what's coming in is on or off, and then you can make things happen, right? So this Arduino one is like the super open source one. It's not like super powerful. It's not like the best thing ever. It's, it's limited, but it's super open source and super everything like that. And it works with USB. So I went to like the Make Magazine store and I bought like the whole thing. And then I went to some other places and I bought all the other stuff. And I pretty much have everything now, except I actually need some solder. I got to go to some Radio Shack.
Yeah, it's solder, right?
Yeah, but I got top Australian guy.
So okay, as long as you admit that it is actually solder, which you just did.
But I'm Australian now.
Oh, are you?
Yes, I got a solder. Solder circuits.
What's the capital of Australia?
Melbourne.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, so what was I saying? Right. So I got all this stuff, and I'm gonna learn how to use it. I'm gonna be all dangerous, and then maybe one day I will make something that will, sort of appear on all the websites. Like, oh my God, guy makes, small version of something.
You know what?
Or,
there's
oh
another...
my God, guy makes this piece of technology talk to this other piece of technology.
See, there's another
iPhone talks to Game Boy.
It really depends which website you get on, because the article headline might be, guy solders finger to other finger found dead.
I doubt that's going to happen.
I can say one thing. I did once drip hot solder into my thumbnail once, like between the nail and the finger. That was possibly the worst experience of my life.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. But I have to. I need to get like a. I think I'm just gonna take some of the old things we have lying around that are crappy and try to practice the soldering on them.
You know what you can do? I got that old motherboard with all the busted caps. You should take them all off and put them back on.
I could try that. That could work. The thing is, all the soldering I have to do is through the hole, and a lot of stuff on modern technology is surface mount, and surface mount is like very hard, and also I'm never going to do anything. I'm only going to do through the hole, so I don't know. Anyway.
Well, I can say one thing. If you're not worried about it actually working, you can treat all those as through the hole.
I guess that's true. I can just poke holes in it.
No, there are holes because they're not the little tiny ones that are on the side or surface mount. The big ones on my old 8-bit motherboard are through the hole effectively.
Really? Oh, so I could
in the hole. Yeah. Kind of through the hole. You could do it.
Anyway, I gotta,
Well, I can
go buy like a pack of resistors that are like, less than a cent each, and then just like solder them all into a thing full of holes just to practice,
I like the idea of getting a house and all that, and then trying to make the whole house super awesomely automated, like a lot of geeks do.
Yeah, but it's a lot, it's much easier to just buy something that does that rather than try to make all the things.
Well, yes, to a point, but you buy the things that do the basic things, but if you want to do the one complicated thing for which no one made a simple thing...
That's true.
Then you got to do this.
Actually, I was thinking of one thing that might be cool, right? Is you get a Wi-Fi thing, right? And you get the chip and a battery, or you connect it to the wall or whatever, right? And basically have a switch, like physical switches for all the people who live in your house, right? Like maybe 3-way switches, and then LEDs, and then you just write their name on it. And then you flick a switch, and it will like connect to the jabber and be like, so when you leave the house, you could just be like, away with the switch.
Huh.
And when you come back home, you'd be like, home. And it will just change it.
By that logic, why don't you just have an app on your iPhone that
I'm saying.
has a series of presets like left the house, or even better, tie it to the GPS.
The main problem there,
when you get home, it just says Rim's home.
Yep, I thought of that. You know what the problem is? Because the iPhone doesn't have any sort of multitasking or background tasking, you would actually have to turn on the iPhone, go to the app, push the buttons while there's internet around, and then turn off the iPhone, and you have to wait for the GPS to get your location. It's like you'd have to do all this stuff. This is a lot more work than flicking a switch.
See, now this is the problem. We're so close to having all the things I've wanted my whole life.
The G1 does, get the G1 from T-Mobile. You know what? The battery doesn't last all day.
Yep.
Because it sits there all day doing all that shit that you wanted to do.
That's why I just gotta wait.
Yep. Maybe the zinc air batteries that they're talking about will help you.
We'll see.
Yeah. All right, so check this out, right? There's been a recent hubbub, mostly today. It's sort of been like the comeback of net neutrality as an issue, right? And basically what's happened here is the Wall Street Journal and some other people have sort of not understood what net neutrality means. So I feel I have to re-explain this to everyone to make sure that it's clear, right? So originally, this is where net neutrality first became an issue, was this, right? I go to someone who sells an internet service provider, maybe the cable company, the phone company, someone else, right? I get a connection. It's a T1, whatever, right? It's so many megabits per second, okay? I pay for the T1. That's all I pay for. If I use it a lot or if I use it a little bit, I pay the same, right? It doesn't change, right? What they wanted to do was, what some of the internet service providers wanted to do is they wanted to say, hey, look, right? On the other end of the internet service, right? So I'm on this end with my T1. On the other end is Google, right? If I visit Google, right, then Google's data is going over their line, so they feel like they should be able to charge Google. They are charging Google. Google's paying for internet connections on its side to someone else, and then it's just this big network of everyone tied together.
It pretty much just boils down to that. Pretty much everyone who knows about the technology agrees that the ISPs and the high-level providers and the internet itself should be completely agnostic to the content and the originator of the content.
Yes, so what they wanted to do is they wanted to say, all right, look, Google, you should pay us, more because you're using more of our bandwidth. Or they were going to say, all right, look, everyone, we're still going to let all the traffic go through. So if you visit Google, it'll still make it to the other side. But if Google pays us money, then it'll be faster for you people to visit Google than it'll be for you to visit, say Yahoo, right? Unless Yahoo also pays us money. So what that would be is actually, it's not net neutral because different things you are visiting are getting preferential treatment, and other things that you are visiting are getting sort of demoted, right? So the actual what is going over the lines is being discriminated against, right? Basically what happened here, right, is Google said, hey, look, here we have a plan here called Open Edge, I think is their profit, the name of their plan here. And the idea for Google's thing was that they were going to put servers, they wanted to pay ISPs to put their Google servers, co-locate them at the ISP. So we have Cablevision here, right? Optum Online. So instead of Google getting preferential treatment on the networking side, right, what would happen is Google would just put a server at Cablevision, and then they wouldn't get any preferential treatment, but it would just be faster because Google has the server right there instead of it going all the way to, Mountain View, California, or wherever it is, right? So that's perfectly net neutral, as long as anyone who can afford it is also allowed to, put servers there. So what happened is, Google came out with this, and Larry Lessig, who's a net neutrality supporter, came out and said that was cool. But all these other people who misunderstood it were like, oh, I thought you guys are for net neutrality. Now you're against it, giving Google preferential treatment. Why should Google be faster? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's not, it is net neutral. They're putting up servers in a different place. We're not modifying the network to make Google packets go faster and other people's packets go slower. We're just putting Google servers out there, and as long as anyone who can afford it can do the same thing,
see,
there's
that's the
nothing
tricky
wrong
part,
with it.
because at the same time, ISPs do have the discretion to, like, if you're going to host a server, to refuse to do business with people on various reasons. Like, for example, if someone's a known spammer, most ISPs, if they find out, will say, look, no, you can't use our service. And all the spammers end up on those shady ISPs.
Oh, you want to talk about, but see, that there's a difference between spamming and putting out viruses where you're sort of violating, the terms of service and whatnot, and as opposed to just, I'm putting out a podcast that they don't like.
What if I just make a terms of service that I update every time I get a customer I like that says, I only offer this to these specific companies and no one else?
That's not net neutral. It's not cool.
But what's the specific line? What am I allowed to discriminate against, and what am I not allowed to discriminate against?
You're allowed to discriminate against spam and illegal things. Like child porn.
What is spam?
Unsolicited emails.
All right, so how do you know for sure?
What do you mean, how do I know for sure? It's obvious.
Is it really, though?
Yeah,
it is. A new company, their name isn't Googled anywhere. They're a fresh new company, and they want to buy hosting with you.
All right.
They're actually spammers. They start spamming.
I look at the emails, which are perfectly visible.
What do you mean you look at the emails? What do you look for?
Viagras. Oh, gee, I wonder. Or, hey, look, I'm getting a bunch of emails to abuse at me, and they all say, hey, I'm getting fucking spam from you bitches.
All right, but spam, in many cases, is not actually illegal if it's done in certain ways, so where are you going to draw the line? Because
at illegal spam?
Okay, so the only thing you can possibly discriminate against if you're an ISP is if the thing that they want to do is actually directly illegal.
Yeah.
All right. What if you ran out of rack space?
What do you mean?
One more person wants to buy a service and you don't have any more rack space. Are you allowed to say no?
I have no more. It's like if someone wants to buy a banana and I'm the grocery store and I sold all the bananas.
So I have 1 U of rack space. I sell it to Google. Now I'm full.
All right.
Is that okay?
You sell it to first come, first serve.
I make the rack space for Google and then I don't make any more.
See, but we're not talking about making rack space for Google. We're talking about co-location.
Yes, co-location. So I allow Google to co-locate in the one cubby hole that I have free for co-location, and now it's full and no one else can do it.
That's fine because you're not doing anything on the network side.
Okay, that's what I was saying, because it sounded like you were saying that if I offer a service to anyone as an ISP, I have to offer it to everyone no matter what, unless it's illegal. But it sounds like now that's not the case.
Well, no, it's just, I was just talking to you, but net neutrality is about the network.
Yes,
right?
that's the point I'm trying to make.
It's not about, who puts servers where. Anyone could put servers anywhere they want to. It's about the network. You shouldn't filter packets. You shouldn't, make some packets slower and some packets faster. All the packets are just treated as faceless packets headed towards their destination, and they get sent to their destination with, the best possible service available.
So how do I do QoS, though? What if my network gets saturated and not everything's going to get through? Am I allowed to...
You just do it evenly.
What do you mean evenly, though? That doesn't really work so well, because UDP versus TCP, taking it evenly from TCP will greatly affect performance, while taking it evenly from UDP, especially for like streaming video and things...
Yes, but if you're doing a TCP versus UDP thing, then you're doing a fair and even thing across... You're not discriminating by content or by who it is.
So you're
discriminating by it's all TCP and all UDP.
So it's okay to discriminate at layer 3 or 4, but not layer 5, or layer 2, 3, but not layer 4.
You're not discriminating based on people or content. You're just, it's just across the board.
But it's the content of the layer 2 packet.
But it's not what they're doing. It's not Skype versus eBay versus Google. It's it's just it's all UDP needs to slow down because we don't have any more.
All right, so I just completely throttle UDP, which will screw up a lot of these shady peer-to-peer things. And happens to,
but it's all UDP, and you're not cutting it. You're slowing all of it equally.
So I'm just curious. I'm allowed to discriminate against all UDP. Am I allowed to discriminate
you can't filter
against
it? But if your net, you got to manage your network.
Yes. So am I allowed to discriminate against all port 9008? Regardless of content. Here's the point I'm trying to make.
No.
Net neutrality is very difficult to define from a legal perspective. This is the biggest issue, is that how do you specify in legalese in an unambiguous way what is allowed and what is not? Because technologists, like, I can look at it and say that's neutral, that's not, that's neutral, that's not, and it's obvious to me and most techs would agree with me, but that doesn't really fly in a court of law. I mean, the whole, is it pornography? Well, I know it when I see it. That's BS. That works even less for technology. So how can we fight for net neutrality if we can't define what it truly is on a very specific, logical, unambiguous level?
It is true in a way. But the point is people need to understand, what like when these issues come up, like, you got to really pay attention and, think about what's being said and what's going on. And, it's really common sense once you understand even like a little bit what, the current issue is, like what's fair and what's not fair, and what would be okay and what would not be okay. Well, it's like, is it okay for Google to pay someone to put a server somewhere? Yeah. Is it okay for someone to make Google go faster and to make something else go slower? Yahoo goes slower?
But at the same time, but here's the other thing. What's the line between, like, do you do based on like one layer of ISP versus another layer? And what if I buy a T1 for myself and I sell it to my two neighbors and it's just our little network? Am I allowed to discriminate against their stuff even though they're paying me?
That's a tough question.
Exactly.
Possibly. I guess if you're a company, you can definitely do it. And it depends on what your agreement is with your neighbors.
But an ISP is just a company, so all the consumers who sign up for ISPs, the agreement just says, yeah, if you use peer-to-peer, we'll just destroy you.
I would agree with that, possibly. That, right? The problem with that...
See, no, the problem with that is that...
twofold. Number one...
I'll get to a root.
The false advertising of the ISPs.
That is the root.
And wait, no, there's the other issue. The monopoly of the ISPs. You often do not have a choice in broadband ISP. If I could choose between Fios, Cablevision, whatever, then maybe it would be okay for them to, start doing shit. But because I have no other choice, that's reasonable, we can't be, it needs to be treated like a utility and not treated like...
Well, that's it, because it's not just false advertising.
That's why, the phone system is so heavily regulated, because... in 99% of places, you don't have a choice. You get Verizon because you live here.
But it's not just, looking at the false advertising perspective, even if it's not technically false advertising, the fact is that every ISP basically makes their terms of service say that they can do anything at any time for any reason.
Yep.
But then again, how do we stop that? Of course, the easy way to stop that is to allow competition in some way.
Well, our ISP started doing the stupid DNS thing. And they also started doing, they've always blocked, I think, port 25, unless you pay for the business thing. But that's all they do. Otherwise, they're cool.
For now.
Yeah.
The only reason we haven't had issues is that, as far as I can tell, none of our neighbors really are internet people.
No, not really.
We get far more bandwidth than we should be getting.
Yeah. The real thing that goes on here, right, is that, the ISP gets an internet connection from someone else, right? They buy an OC3, let's say, right? And then they want to sell that to everyone in town. Now, let's say the OC3, I don't know how much bandwidth does it have, like 100, 200, something like that? A lot, right? But they've got 100 customers. If they give each customer one, right? That's only 100 customers for one OC3. That means each customer has to pay hundreds of dollars a month. Not gonna happen. No. And the thing is, even if they do that, right, they're not going to use all of the OC3. Every single customer would have to BitTorrent full on at the exact same time for the OC3 to be used up. So and the way to make money on this, right, is if you actually have enough bandwidth to support every customer going full on all the time, you're losing money. You're not, or your customers are paying way too much.
But see, the problem is everyone always advertises unlimited internet with a tiny asterisk.
Yep. So what you have to do is you have to buy 100 megabits of bandwidth and then sell more than 100 megabits of bandwidth. You have to sell to like 1,000 customers, giving them 10 each.
But at the same time,
and 90% of the time, it'll be just fine.
No, but the problem is that as our society gets more technological, more people are utilizing the resource that is given to them in the manner that they expect to utilize it.
But they're not using it 100%, and it's economically infeasible to actually be forced to be able to handle 100% capacity.
Yes, but at the same time, what do we do when basically there's no way to handle this situation because no one is willing to pay what it actually costs? and yet at the same time, there's the monopoly, so you don't have any choice regardless. What do we do?
You gotta basically the thing that John C. Dvorak is actually kind of right, even though people think he's crazy, is that he says there should be metering and not net neutral metering. It's just you pay for how much bandwidth you use.
The problem is you can't sell metered bandwidth in the U.S. because people are so used to seeing unlimited with the tiny asterisk that if they see a per hour or per kilobit or whatever charge, they're going to freak out and think it's the days of AOL all over again.
Well, if the price is reasonable, then it's all good. The thing is, everyone who, argues against this is always like, oh, the price is going to be crazy.
Well, the thing is, the prices are unreasonable.
I know. But if the price is reasonable, I would be totally cool with, being metered as long as it meant I could, it's like I could do as much as I want. If I do more, I'm going to pay.
The other issue is I get this impression that if
cent per megabyte,
if all the ISPs decided to start metering, they wouldn't lower their prices and then just meter accordingly to cover the cost. They would simply keep their current prices and charge more for anyone who goes above a certain amount.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Is it's basically saying, yes, metering would be cool if the person doing the metering was not a dick. But the people who are running this are dicks.
Metering would be cool if the person doing it, even if they are a dick, was regulated in some way.
They don't have to be regulated. They just have to be not a dick. Charge people a fair, correct price of a fraction of a cent.
That's impossible. So we need to regulate it. Because there's
not impossible.
It is because you still have to have a physical wire go to everyone's house. And
yes, you have a flat fee for the wire, and but
who maintains that wire? Because the people who maintain the wire they want to have the monopoly.
The same people who maintain the wire now.
Yes, the people who actually also sell you the bandwidth in many cases, or they lease it from the local telco.
It needs to be a utility, just like phone and electricity and water, and then it'll be done.
Yes, it does. If it was treated like utility as opposed to this. I mean, it is utility.
But think about it. Every other utility, though, is metered. Electricity is metered. Water is metered.
But at the same time, there are a lot of laws. Like, for example, we get our electricity and our gas. But by law, even though the pipes and wires that come to our house are owned by one company, we have the right to buy our gas and electricity from anyone else out there there's a certain limitation, but we can buy it from other people. And the people who own the wires to our house are forced by law to accommodate that, and they are forced to charge us a certain minimal regulated amount, and they can't charge us extra because they have a monopoly on the wire.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's possible for people to do this without having the government tell them to do it.
But it's never happened, so we have to have the government tell them what to do.
I'm just saying.
I mean, as much as I'm an advocate of deregulation and libertarianism, history has shown that deregulation ends in ruin.
Yeah. Oh, if we ever get some sort of WiMAX wireless meshy network, we won't need these bastards anymore anyway. Because unlike water and electricity, we can push it over the sky. And the FCC is actually strongly considering, allocating some spectrum to free internet.
Even better, that allows all the crazy things to happen, because then nerds can make mesh networks that are entirely independent of any possible government control or interference.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way for the government in any part of the world to do anything about it, which means two things.
Well, short of technological jamming and, all those Orwellian things.
Even then, it would be a war that the government would lose.
Yes.
Any government would lose.
Well, the government
even the Chinese and the
government could win by going one step further and cutting the tall trees.
I guess, yes.
That's the only way, though.
That's the only way. But
if that
happened, you would get A, nerd awesomeness everywhere, and B, child porn would be all over the place.
Well, no, if they had the cut the tall trees situation, I think you'd run into remember that article we talked about a long time ago about how engineers think like terrorists or terrorists think like engineers?
Yeah.
You don't want to piss off all the engineers.
Terrorists don't think like engineers.
Well, no, the good terrorists think like engineers. Luckily,
there aren't any, though. That's the thing.
Luckily, people who think like engineers aren't evil.
Every engineer, right? I mean, look at some of the stuff that Bruce Schneier writes. He's like the foremost security expert in the world, right? He's like, oh, this is so easy. Look how you can get through the airport. Look how you can do this. Look how you can do that. It's so simple. It's like if I wanted to make a knife on an airplane, I would go and get some iron epoxy at Home Depot and a piece of cardboard, bring it on the plane. I fold the piece of cardboard, I put in the iron epoxy, I hold it there. Now I have a sharp knife on the plane. Ta-da, right?
No,
engineers think like this, and they come up with these things all the time. I come up with these things all the time. It's trivially easy to ruin the world if you have an engineering brain. But anyone who is smart enough to think of these things and be an engineer is not a terrorist, because smart people aren't evil. That's the reason that the world is still in one piece, is because no smart people are evil. If there was even one engineer who was an ass and wanted to kill everyone, we would all be dead.
Anyway, before we talk too much more about that, I'd like to read for you a quote from an article. This is kind of my news bit. And you're going to feel a lot of righteous indignation. But
I'm not indignant or fat.
Maybe not you, but the rest of you, you're going to feel some sort of bristle, perhaps. And I'm going to read the whole thing. I'll let you mull over it for a second. Then we'll talk about what actually was going on there.
All right.
Quote, Mr. Starks, I'm sure you strongly believe in what you're doing, but I cannot either support your efforts or allow them to happen in my classroom. At this point, I am not sure what you are doing is legal. No software is free, and spreading that misconception is harmful. This is a world where Windows runs on virtually every computer, and putting on a carnival show for an operating system is not helping these children at all. I am sure if you contacted Microsoft, they would be more than happy to supply you with copies of an older version of Windows, and that way, your computers would actually be of service to those receiving them. The story here was basically that you can read the articles. I don't really want to explain the whole situation.
And make sure that you read the article written by the guy that he wrote sort of after it exploded, so you can get the real story.
Basically, dude showing off open source, teacher who obviously...
Well, not just any dude. He's a dude that puts together junky old computers and gives them to people who can't afford computers, and he puts Linux on them.
Yes, but teacher sees this going on, has no understanding of technology.
Yeah, she sees kids in a class with computers, right? Looking at something. They're all gathered around, obviously up to mischief, right? They got some CDs they got from some guy running on computers, and the teacher doesn't know anything. She's not technologically literate or anything. She's a Windows world, 90% of people.
And of course, freaks out and leads to this. Guy writes an article. Article gets read by people who then paraphrase article full of righteous indignation, gets crazier and crazier and crazier, and makes a little internet explosion. And then there's a whole follow-up article where the guy who wrote the article was like, dude, yes, she was wrong, and yes, she was dumb, but seriously, you people are overreacting times a million.
Yeah, he found out that the school system actually, even though they run Windows, has shit tons of open source. They got the Open Office and the Firefox and the whole, it's just, there's one teacher who didn't know. She saw some kids in her class up to mischief. She was not technologically literate. So she said some things and, from her, understanding or whatever. And then she learned a lesson that, oh my God, Linux open source, I didn't know.
But the point I don't want to talk about the article. I don't want to talk about the oh my God, the internet overreacted. Oh shit. But this brings up a lot of really important issues that we have all as technologists run into. And first off, the fact that if you're in school and the authority figures that are responsible for your education appear to know less about the things you know about than you are not going to respect them. And one of the biggest problems I've seen among smart kids, especially kids who are smart in technology in schools and public high schools and public middle schools, is that because of the curriculum and because you'll often have teachers who, while they are very knowledgeable in their subjects or whatever, at the same time, they are completely unknowledgeable in the things that the students are knowledgeable about. It's very easy for teachers to lose all respect and in fact gain the contempt of the best and brightest students in their classes simply by the fact that on the surface they appear to be completely ignorant and illiterate, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, you've always had a problem of students disrespecting teachers. This is nothing new. And students thinking they're smarter than teachers. That is nothing new either, right?
In fact, I'm sure you all think you're smarter than your teachers.
Yes.
I did too. The only difference between you and me is that I was right and
That's
you're
right,
wrong.
Yeah. But nowadays, right, you have this compounding problem of the kids basically live in a completely separate world than the teachers do, except for the very young teachers. It's These are, I mean, like in the 50s, even in like when I was in school, right? Me and my teachers, we lived in the same world. We had, it's like we everything was sort of an even understanding. I might have known about more than them in computers, but it's like,
they knew more about George Washington.
Yeah, it's like, there weren't like this huge gap between the generations, right? But now there's always a generation gap. But now the generation gap is ginormous.
I mean, look, here's an example. When I was in high school, I watched The Simpsons when it was on TV. I watched it as it came out on TV. All my friends watched it, and all my teachers watched it.
Yep.
So we all knew there was a common shared culture. But now, a kid in high school now, he watches like a YouTube poop, and that is what he is into. The teacher doesn't even know what that is.
Yeah,
wouldn't even understand it if you showed it to him.
I mean, like, think about this, right? In the 50s, you'd have a problem, right? The problem would be kids got a Playboy in class, right? But the teacher understands Playboy magazine, right?
Teacher doesn't understand
the student understands Playboy magazine. They have a common understanding, and they know, shit, I better hide this shit from the teacher, and shit, you in trouble, mister, right? There was this common understanding, even if there was a lack of respect or a generation gap. Nowadays, there is actually... It's difficult to communicate because the gap has widened. Something that has always been a problem is now a tremendous problem. The teacher sees the student doesn't understand that Wikipedia is actually kind of good, kind of bad, kind of not in between, I mean, like, how long was it like, don't cite any websites in your paper because it's like, dude, that's not how the world works anymore, right? Just because it's in a book versus a website, there's nothing inherent about the medium that says this is right and this is wrong, all right? It's just so huge, and problems like this will happen.
Now, compounding this is the fact that part of the gap is just the fact that the modern world requires technological literacy, and yet a lot of teachers and people who are in positions of authority over children do not have technological literacy. And while they can still get about their lives, and while they are extremely knowledgeable in their fields, I mean, the history professor who's 70 years old...
The history professor knows about fucking history,
and has never used a computer, he knows the Peloponnesian Wars. He will go to great lengths of explaining about Themistocles and democracy and all that business.
And he'll write you a 100-page book about it on his typewriter.
But maybe, he doesn't use a computer. And you see this a lot. There are teachers who don't use computers. They don't really understand them. There's that recent South Park where Butters was a vampire where Mr. Garrison's at the front like, now click on the thing.
Oh, that was the perfect illustration of what's going on. Every single student's playing like it was one of those, FPS war games like the Call of Duties or something, one of those.
Yep.
Right? And Mr. Garrison's like, and no one knew.
But the student who, I mean... Imagine it's the equivalent of in the 1900s where I'm in school and my teacher is illiterate and yet I know how to read. And that is the way someone who's technologically illiterate comes across to a young student in a school. They see a teacher who has trouble making PowerPoint go, and they look at that teacher as though that teacher is completely illiterate.
Yep. So I remember, this actually reminds me of some time when I was at RIT, I was taking this computer security class. It was a pretty cool class. It was, with this cool guy. I won't get into that now, but there was some time in the class spent talking about open source and such, right? And there was a person in the class who was an older woman. She wasn't like a college student age. She was someone who went back to college, which is totally cool. But she didn't really understand the open source. She was like, "Why would you make something and then that was so great and then give it away for free? You could make money. I just don't get it, right?" And at the time, what I said was because we're not assholes, right? But upon later thinking about it, here's the correct answer to this question, right? Of why would you do open source and such, because people just don't understand it. And that's one of the fundamental misunderstanding this lady had, right? Why? No software is free. Who would possibly create something for free? That doesn't make any sense, right? Here's the answer to that question, and it ties into what we were just talking about, the illiteracy, right? Okay, we talk about why would you do something if you weren't getting compensated for it? Well, if you actually saw like a hobbling old lady who is sick, not a homeless lady, but just a regular, who is, sick and crazy.
Yep, and you give her an Ubuntu CD.
No. And she's actually having a problem. Let's say an old lady like falls over in the street. Are you going to require compensation to call 911 and, help her out and such? No, you just do it, right? Well, from a technological person looking at most of the world, right? Everyone is old ladies falling over in the street with heart attacks. That's how stupid the vast majority of people are when it comes to technology. So open source is calling 911 for the old ladies. We're doing it for free because you are fucking going to die because you don't understand this shit. You're that stupid. You're that screwed. So it's like, why could we charge you to call the ambulance and rescue you from your insane technological stupidity?
I think
that's what open source is.
But there's another factor there with open source. The fact that I don't think a lot of people in previous generations, other than, of course, people who are hip to technology, really have understood the fact that in the modern world, many hobbies, while they're hobbies and they're enjoyable to the people doing them, produce valuable, fruitful works.
Yeah, I mean, like in the olden days, there were a few hobbies that produced fruitful works, like ham radio sort of produced fruitful works. And I guess, some people are like photographers and that's produced some fruitful works.
When some people think of hobbies, like they think making a ship in the bottle, and that doesn't help anyone.
That doesn't help anyone except your mantle.
But I guess nowadays, like kids today, our ship in a bottle is a YouTube poop, which I guess doesn't add anything to society either.
But some people's ship in a bottle is like, Mifos, which is a software program that allows, banks in all sorts of, poverty-stricken places to manage microloans.
Or say Geeknights, which provides entertainment to at least dozens of people.
At least dozens. Dozens of possible human beings.
I always like how It's All Politics. They're very widely listened to, but whenever they talk about the listener, they always refer to the listener, and they hope the listener enjoys the show.
That's pretty good. We should. Yeah. I'd steal that if it wasn't stealing.
Yeah, it's like we got a letter from the listener today.
Oh, so they never name the listener?
No,
it's always the same one.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. I like that.
I like that show.
All right, let's move on.
Anyway, things of the day. Was that okay? Should I say it that way? Should I say it differently?
You can say it however you want because it's whatever.
Or can I?
Check this out. MSI, which is a motherboard maker mostly, but they're making netbooks now, like most people are. And they got this one called the MSI Wind. Pretty popular, the MSI Wind, right? Apparently, the MSI Wind is almost exactly identical to a Mac. Hardware-wise. It comes running XP or Linux or whatever, right? Now, it was missing something, though. They didn't have the driver for the wireless. So if you installed the OS X on it, right, you just need a little hacked version of OS X and you're good to go. But you didn't need any hardware mods or any firmware updates or anything like that. All you needed was a hacked version of the OS X software on a DVD and you're good to go, right? The problem was that there was no driver for the wireless, right? So you wouldn't be able to do any wireless if you installed OS X. Otherwise, it'd be just fine. There was a little leak, little possibly almost guaranteed intentional leak with a wink wink from the MSI people. So now you can install OS X on the MSI Wind.
Oh, snap.
And that's my thing of the day because that's just so awesome that there was one of those wink wink leaks. Yeah, intentionally releasing the Wi-Fi driver so everyone can install OS X on a non-Mac.
Because the thing is, having OS X for like a TV PC.
Plus, you're not going to be paying for this copy of OS X. You're going to get a hacked one.
Yeah, but like right now, we have the oldest, slowest, like the very first Mac Mini. Like the first one.
No, we have the very
Mac
first
Mini.
Intel one.
I'm going to consider that the very first Mac Mini.
There was a G4 one.
Yes, but that does not count.
All right.
But anyway, it's old and slow, but for being a TV PC, it's fantastic.
It's okay. It's not perfect.
No, it's not. But while we lose a few things like easy emulation,
it'd be better if we had an HD TV. It'd be better. But that's true for any plugged into the.
I could perhaps foresee buying one of these motherboards and taking the OS X we have, hacking it, and putting it on the second TV in the house.
Well, we would need the newer OS X, the one that we don't have.
Oh, crap.
Because we have the Tiger, we would need the Leopard, which is one newer.
It's a Leopard.
Yeah. I would actually consider, if we had a new house and whatever, first we need to get a newer TV.
God, yes.
But
I'm done with CRT. CRTs belong in basements.
Yeah, or they belong in the trash. But anyway, after we're done with that, I could foresee eventually buying if they ever come out with a newer Mac Mini, we just get like the newer, better one. That way, like, you know, it wouldn't have trouble like decoding videos sometimes.
Because the benefits of having like Linux or building it ourselves are somewhat mitigated by the fact that
you get that little remote control,
and the fact that the
99% of the time, all you want to do is watch a video. And even though we can't run an emulator on it very easily, who cares?
Plus, it's the physical design.
The virtual console.
The fact that thing is a tiny silent box counts for a lot.
It's like I could go and build the most amazing, like, you know, home theater PC, HD PC, but it would be loud.
Yeah, even if you water cool, like you went to craziness, it'd still have that little.
And it's big. So the smallness and the quietness and the limited functionality of the Mac Mini is worth it because it still achieves 99% of the functionality we want, even though it's not 100%. And it, you know, that quietness and smallness outweighs the lack of functionality. So,
I'm going to teach you all a word. And I hope that you will start using this
I think
word.
we've discussed this on Geeknights before.
We may have. It might have been a long time ago. And this
definitely a wicked long time ago.
Was pretty interesting. But just so you all are aware, I'd forgotten about this word. But today, I was setting up some Apache stuff at work. And I had to reference, because I don't have all the Apache directives and things memorized.
No one does.
Maybe one person does.
No.
There's got to be some guy whose whole life is Apache. He's like the Rain Man.
No, even like the Apache Foundation people don't fucking know.
No, not those people. But there's got to be an Apache Rain Man.
I don't know.
Anyway, long story short, one way to refer to the hash sign or the pound sign is the octothorpe.
Yep. See, I knew there was a word octothorpe, and Rim said it, and I go, I've heard that word. And then he's like, oh, it's the pound sign. I'm like, oh, I knew that. It's like, you know, hate it when you know something, but you can't recall it at the moment.
It's like the
pointer. It's like you knew it, but you couldn't come up with it.
The pointer in the relational.
No one believes you knew it.
The pointer in the relational database that is your brain is pointing that, like, there's a pointer pointing at it. But you can't find that pointer. You find all these other pointers that get close, but there's like a link missing. And you know that happens when you're trying to remember something, and like you're thinking like
you know it, but you don't know it.
And you're like, what's the word?
And then as soon as you're reminded, suddenly you're like, oh, I did know that, but there's no way to prove you knew that. So you could be lying.
Octothorpe. Like it comes suddenly when you get to the right pointer. But anyway, this is an article talking about the etymology of the word octothorpe and all the different theories of where it really came from. If you're a tech, or you listen to Geeknights, you're the kind of person who would like to have an affected way of saying octothorpe. To give a little quote, just so you see where this article's going, he says that it was a joke term, originally octotherp, invented by two friends, John C. Shack and Hubert T. Uthlout, who deliberately included the TH sound, knowing that it would be difficult for speakers of certain languages to say.
Nah.
They then went on to quietly introduce it into various documents until it was too late to retract it.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, the article's fun, and hopefully we'll get some affectations going here.
Affectations are good. All right. So today we decided we were having a hard time coming to the tech topic, but I thought it might be interesting to talk about, you know, the ebooks, the e-paper, ebook readers, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, especially because today I carried a very heavy and large book to work and then home from work. And I didn't even have my bag. And let me tell you, I'm getting real sick of carrying gigantic books around and then spilling things on them.
I think my strategy right now is I'm not going to buy any more non-comic books that are on Dead Tree, right? And then when I finish all the ones I've got that are on Dead Tree, then I will go and buy the Kindle 2 or whatever it is, and then go for that. Because you know what? One of the major things I've had about the Kindle that I don't like is that the selection is not as strong as it is with the Dead Tree, right? You know, you can get any book on Dead Tree, but you can't get any book on Kindle. But you know what? You can get enough books on Kindle, more than you're going to read in your whole life. So does it really matter? Does it really? So I think that's my plan. But even though that's my plan, it's not everyone's plan. And I think people, you know, they have a hard time, you know, sort of understanding what's sort of holding ebooks back, what's holding e-paper back. Why is the Kindle the way it is? Why isn't it there yet? You know, why is all this other technology like crazy? Why can we do a 3D game, but we can't do a freaking ebook? It should be the simplest thing. It's just text, right?
Well, the short answer is displays, batteries, DRM.
Let's talk about the displays, right? unlike, your LCD screen on your computer, an ebook reader has, different needs, right? I mean, it's only displaying text, hopefully, and only, we'd like to get more colors, but right now we can't even get black and white, so let's just stick with that for now.
Yeah, well,
right?
I mean, in the long run, I'm reading this book on advanced skiing techniques, and it consists half of text and half of pictures of guys doing the ski techniques and showing how to do them.
Yep, so that really wouldn't work out on the Kindle.
Yeah, no Kindle for that.
But, for most books, like a sci-fi novel, it's just text, right? And even if there's a few illustrations, they're mostly black and white anyway. It's a mass market trade paperback, you're all good, right? And you could do those, right? So it's not anyway. But in the long run, we want color. Right now, black and white. Why can't we make a black and white screen that's good? Number one, we need to make a screen that doesn't hurt when you look at it for a long time. You look at a book for a long time. If you look at even a good LCD, you look at it for a long time, it's bright. It's shining light at you, and you get some eye strains. It's
tricky business because you want to. One philosophy is to emulate as much as possible what actual printed paper looks like, because people have been reading that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the best way to go right now, because if we perfect that, we'll get to an acceptable point. But at the same time, we really need to go beyond that, because the printed paper, while it's great for a lot of things, at the same time, it does have its limitations. Can't read in the dark.
Yeah, I was just going to say, right? You can't read printed paper in the dark. Well, okay, so we don't need the light behind the screen anymore, because you can't read the Kindle in the dark either. We'll make it sort of like the original GBA screen, where the light came from outside and bounced off.
But now, do you want to have a book light on your Kindle?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, a book light on the Kindle, is that really necessary? You could have a switch that turns on a light behind the screen. That could work.
But even then...
that drains the batteries.
No, light behind the screen. Lightening the background behind the text is going to increase the eye strain, because now, again, you've got this direct light
it could be
out of the book.
You ever see those Timex watches where you push the button, it sort of has this greenish light? That doesn't, it's pretty cool. You could do something like that.
But at the same time, that color might be really fatiguing in the long run.
It could be. It really you gotta figure these things out.
This is a part where we need to do a lot of just research of testing humans and looking at their physiological reactions to reading things.
Yep. So LCD screens, right, as we have them for our computers and TVs and whatnot, and plasmas also use too much electricity. They're too bright. And, they're actually too thick. I mean, an ebook reader's got to be small, or else what's the point? I might as well carry the freaking book. It's got to be small and light and last a long time. Otherwise, I'm just going to take the book with me. There's no point, right?
Yep. Plus,
it's also got to be cheap.
And I mean, look at the display. Part of the problem with LCDs and the technology we have is that they constantly have to be refreshed. There's a refresh rate. And unless the refresh rate is super high, even if you can't physically see it, it causes eye strain eventually.
Yeah, I mean, look, your computer monitor most likely is completely redrawing itself, as in blank, draw everything again, like 75 times a second. It's constantly redrawing itself, right? And that's, that's why when you talk about like FPS in games, you talk about vertical sync, right? So it's like if you're playing Counter-Strike and your monitor is 75 hertz, it redraws itself 75 times a second. What's the point of having Counter-Strike do 100 FPS? You're only seeing 75 of them. So vertical sync says, hey, Counter-Strike, just make 75 FPS and I'll see all the 75 and it'll be locked in, and it'll be totally cool. That's what vertical sync is. Now, if I'm reading a book, if you refresh the screen at all, even if it's really fast, right? Number one, that's using electricity to, redraw. And I'm usually looking at one unmoving thing for a long time, a page. It's not like a game where it's moving all over the place. It's
actually,
a page of text.
Very specifically, because this, it's not only is it one unmoving thing, but the biggest deal breaker in the world for me, and I feel like this, even if people haven't thought of it, is the biggest deal breaker for anyone. There can't be any scrolling.
Nope.
Left, right, or up, down. Scrolling, as opposed to page flipping, is perhaps, because even if people, especially people who are used to reading books, I feel like I can read long documents on my monitor because I'm kind of used to it. But if you're not used to that, have it scrolling and having text move and your eyes following it is going to tire you out so quickly.
Yeah, most of the things just flip pages. They don't really. I've never seen an ebook reader with scrolling going on.
But I see people having to zoom in and scroll just because, or zoom in and then flip pages more often But that's just the side effect that a lot of people's eyes are really bad.
Oh, and they can't read the smaller fonts. Yeah, handling fonts, that's a software issue, though. That's not the hardware issue.
Yeah, but
it is an issue.
Yep, but the display has to be high enough resolution to support a reasonable amount of text on page, also big enough size to where I can turn the pages at a reasonable pace without scrolling or without having to turn the page constantly.
That's true. If you have insufficient resolution, you're going to have to either move the text around or something. It's
also,
not gonna...
insufficient resolution means less capability for anti-aliasing and all those things that make fonts look good.
Yeah, better looking fonts makes it a lot easier to read. I mean, you ever look at I'm not going to lie here, right? You look at a computer running OS X, right? All the fonts look really great and all the windows are really smooth. It's not anything the Mac does in the hardware. It's just got the same NVIDIA chips everything else has. It's not anything special about the monitor. They're just LCD monitors, right? It's the rendering algorithms they use, right? Everything you see in OS X is actually based on PostScript or PDF or something similar to that, the rendering system. And Steve Jobs is always super anal about font rendering and all that shit. And that's why everything's super smooth. If you VNC to a Mac on your PC, everything in the Mac window will be super smooth. All right. So, and it makes, there's no lie, it makes things a lot easier to read and it's a lot more comfortable. And it does make, good typography makes a significant difference. So you need a high resolution screen to get that on the ebook. To really make it a much more enjoyable thing and not have you go, fuck this, I'm reading a paper book. All right. So we gotta, you gotta have a screen that when you push the button, right? Now, I just said we don't want the refresh rate, right? We want the screen to not refresh, right? When you're just looking at one page. That way it doesn't use any battery when you're looking at one page, not doing anything. And you're not gonna hurt your eyes because the screen's redrawing itself. But when I push the button to go to the next page, that next page has to be there instantly. So it's you need a really quick redrawing. Otherwise, the page would be I'm turning the page. Okay. You need to have it be click, new page, immediately. So it's got to have a quick refresh, but it has to not do it unless you push the button. That's very, very tricky. We can't seem to manage that.
Now, of course, in terms of just other hardware, and this is tied into the display because a lot of display technology either uses a lot of power or sucks, batteries also still suck.
Yep.
This thing's got to last an entire transatlantic flight without me having to swap batteries.
Exactly. I mean, even swap or recharge or anything like that. Basically, I don't have to, think about this. Is there's a power outage, right? I can read a book with a candle or some shit, right? But and my Kindle runs out of batteries in the power outage. It's not good. It's not good at all. Now I'm bookless. So the battery's got to last a long time. And as, there's always advances in battery technology, getting more electricity per battery and less weight in the battery and all this stuff, less expensive. But people seem to forget, and, Rim points this out all the time, too.
It's one of my favorite things to point out, but I'll let you do it this time.
Yeah. Is that a battery is energy in a brick, basically, or energy in a tube or something like that.
It's a controlled hand grenade.
Yes. If you want a battery that lasts longer, laws of physics get in your way. You have to put more energy in a smaller space. If you want it to be lighter and last longer and etc., you're going to need to put more energy in less space. More energy in less space means explodey, right? There's no way around this. It's the laws of physics. There's no way you can put a whole shit ton of energy in a very small space and not have it be dangerous. It's there's no way around that. And in a lot of ways, that is holding us back. There are, in existence, batteries that are really freaking great. They're just fucking really dangerous, and that's why you don't have them in your laptop.
I'd be willing to accept, actually. Personally, I'm willing to accept the danger and even the weight.
The danger isn't even you gonna hurt yourself with. I mean, we're already having problems like cell phone setting on fire.
No, the danger is someone turns it into a bomb.
Right. There's no danger to just if you use it normally inappropriately. The danger is only if you're stupid or if you buy a poorly made Chinese junk battery and it sets on fire at the gas station. There's no danger in, a well-made battery being used normally. at all. No matter, even if you put a lot of energy in there. I guess too much energy could be a problem, but we could work that out. That's a solvable problem.
Plus, even more, I'm getting to the point where size matters to me more than weight. And I would actually be willing to accept a very much more heavy small laptop or a very much more heavy Kindle if the battery just lasted twice as long. Like, add a couple pounds to it, but make it dense.
Yeah, just if it's it doesn't. I mean, I put 2 batteries in my laptop. That ain't significant. That's pretty much all the weight. If I take both batteries out, it weighs almost nothing. Like it weighs like maybe the weight of 2 pieces of paper. It's that light. The batteries are all the weight. So really, if I'm putting 2 batteries in it, I'll put 2 heavier batteries in it. It's still the same size. It's not any bigger. It's just more battery life and like an extra pound or 2. Whatever. It's not going to hurt my shoulder. It's already light enough. Big deal. Go for it.
Now, actually, though,
I guess like 10 pounds would bother me, or 5, but not 1.
But it would be like Dragon Ball. It trains you. It makes you strong.
Oh, yes, my shoulder. Great.
Yeah, you'll have one big beefy shoulder.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
But
a big beefy lap.
I guess the third point, like in terms of DRM, honestly, that is not as much of a concern to me as you'd think, because a lot of the things I want to read, one of the reasons I want a device like this is that more and more there are long textual things online that are free that I want to read at my leisure.
Yeah, like Project Gutenberg.
But I don't want to read them on my monitor.
Yeah, Project Gutenberg has like all these files I want to read. But to read them on my monitor is painful, especially when they're too long. I mean,
or plus, I want to read them on the train. So, all right, I copy them to my laptop. I get all these text files on my laptop.
I got to remember my spot. Even if I have a program that's made to help me read Project Gutenberg files, and I turn down the brightness on the monitor and I'll adjust it's still not good enough. I still have to scroll. It's not going to work out.
But honestly, I'm willing to pay.
Printing is too much money and too much paper.
I'm willing to pay what I pay for a paperback book for a DRM'd e-book.
See, that's just the thing, right? It's weird because it's like I'm not willing to pay for music, even though the digital music is cheap and DRM free. But somehow I'm willing to pay for the digital book.
You know why? One reason I think is that with music, they still haven't done what I want them to do, which is you want every song the Beatles ever did organized, $100, $50.
Yeah, I think that's really what it is that everything I buy in some way, that's like media, right, is a lot for a little. I buy a DVD box set, $30, all of Cowboy Bebop, right? I don't buy like some single DVD junk anymore, right? Very rarely, I guess once in a blue moon, right? I don't buy like comic book for $4. I buy like, the omnibus. It's like $20 for like 30 comics, and that's the way to get money for stuff these days. So music, they're not selling every song Beatles have ever done with the correct ID3 tags in high quality for $20. They're selling one song for $1.
It's not even just that.
Even if it's DRM free, fuck that.
It's not even just the deal, the Scott Johnson syndrome. For me, it's very simply the metadata is worth more to me than the data. I can get the data for free. I can pirate anything I want from anywhere at any time. That's not the concern. It's trivial for me to get any music I want. What I want is the metadata, and I'm willing to pay a lot for the metadata.
Yeah, if the music is organized and is high quality, and I don't have to sit there sorting it, that's worth money. I have so many unsorted MP3s, and actually the fact that they are so disorganized is preventing me from listening to a lot of them.
And even when I download torrents, like a while ago, I downloaded a torrent of every Rammstein song ever, including like thousands of bootleg recordings from live concerts.
Yep.
And you know what? It is practically useless to me in the form that I have it in.
Yeah, because it's so unorganized, you can't figure out what to listen to, what's what.
Or even if it is organized, it's always organized differently, and to make it conform to the way I already organize my music is impossible.
Yeah, it's like this guy organizes his stuff by genre, artist, album, and this guy organizes by just artist, album, no genre, and this guy does like, just albums, and this guy does like, by year and then by album.
And I'll put it this way, even though I don't like iTunes very much, like I really don't like it just in general, if whoever offers what I want first will get my money. If Apple was like, hey, we're doing this now. You want every Rachmaninoff piano concerto ever performed by like these 5 people, $100? I will probably give more money to Apple than you could possibly imagine.
I mean, if someone actually did this, I would pretty much sit for like an hour making a list of all the artists that I wanted, and then go buy the complete collection of every single artist, even if it was like $2,000 or something like that. And I'd be like, and then I'd delete every MP3 I had. Just boop, gone. Bye.
Well, I would keep, as long as I wear this, I can cast 3 spells
simultaneously.
Oh my God, I got to start distributing that MP3.
Yeah, any MP3 that was a record label, whatever, But yeah, with books, right, I'm buying books now. So as far as I'm concerned right now, books are a good deal. You got a whole shit ton of pages, a big freaking book full of words, right? And they're relatively cheap. It's like $5 maybe bucks for a book on Amazon, right?
Yep.
And you get a whole book. It's like hours and hours and hours of reading, and it's high quality, right? On the Kindle, the books are like $1, and it's just as much reading.
Plus, I actually really look forward to the rise of digital publishing of books, because there is a barrier to entry to the mass market to small-time authors, because getting a wide publication deal is very expensive. Publishing online with a DRM thing costs you nothing.
Yeah, I mean, think about how many people, have written novels, right? And then no publisher would say yes to them. Well, most likely their book is crap, right? But even though their book is crap, it might be the one that you like. It's like, there are only 10 people in the world who would enjoy this book. We're not publishing it. Well, what if you're one of those 10 people? Well, if that guy puts that book out as an ebook and you got an e-reader, hot damn, you're going to get that book.
Of course.
It's going to be awesome.
When we get to the point where someone publishes their book and then the Technicore dutifully buys exactly 1 copy.
Yeah.
This whole time I've been thinking about Martin Salernus and his books.
But yeah, think about, something like Audible also, right? Which has the DRM. Why don't I do Audible? Well, number one, I don't enjoy the audiobooks as much as the paper books.
I do in very specific circumstances.
Yeah.
They got to give the right person reading it, and it has to be a book that does not benefit from the phrasing and like the word part on the page, as opposed to the idea part.
That also I think that, reading on the page is a more significant intellectual activity that works the brain in a far better and different way than listening.
Yes. Well, my primary use for audiobooks are when I'm driving.
Yeah. But I just use podcasts for that, and I don't need an audiobook. But even if I did need an audiobook, right, I'd say I had no podcast and I had a drive, a commute, that would be a good reason to get an audiobook. Why don't I do Audible? Even without the DRM excuse of not doing Audible, they're so expensive. It's like $15 for a book on Audible. For like $5, I can just get the book. I can get 3 books for the price of 1 audiobook.
But you're not paying for the book. You're paying for like James Earl Jones to read it to you.
Yeah, but it's, as far as I'm concerned, though, it's the same. It's the same thing. You're not going to read the book and listen to the audiobook. So why would I do that? There's no reason to. Unless James Earl Jones came to my house and read it, that would be okay. I'd pay $15.
Cook me a little dinner. I'd pay for that.
Can you cook?
I don't know. If someone comes over to my house and reads to me, I kind of want them to cook for me too.
Okay, sure. I'll read to you. Will you cook for me?
But I mean, there are things, I'm not going to talk about the Kindle itself, but there are a lot of little things that I want that aren't necessarily deal breakers. Like for one, I want the ability I want it to be a touchscreen to where I can take a little stylus or something that's built into it and highlight a bunch of text and hit a button, and it saves that text with an MLA and APA citation, and then we'll send it over the internet to my computer.
That'd be pretty cool.
Or upload it somewhere.
That's a real good one. I like that.
That is something I've wanted for most of my life.
Man, if you did that, though, researchers would be like, and students would be all over. You could just put all the textbooks on there instead of having to rip off college textbooks.
I remember when, the biggest paper I ever wrote at RIT was this long, treatise on political communication. And it was 15 pages long.
You should have written a paper about citations with many citations in it.
The paper was 15 pages long. It took me 2 hours to properly format and double check all my citations. I could have written a 5-page paper in that time.
Yeah, I know, right?
I want the Kindle to be able to do that. Plus, you realize how much more often I would quote things, and people would set up like delicious things where they would share quotations.
Why don't we
books.
make a Firefox plugin that does citations?
Let's do that. That's really easy to make.
Yeah.
That's really easy. No, not just that, though. You need to have a server where you can share citations and tag them.
Oh, wait, I found something.
Citations and quotes.
Zoetro is an easy-to-use Firefox extension to help you collect, manage, and cite your research sources. It lives right where you do your work in the web browser itself.
I will check it out. However, the Kindle needs to do that, or I'm not that interested.
Yeah. Oh, something exists. Someone beat us to it. I wonder if it's good.
Yeah, I'm kind of dubious. I feel like we could do it better, whatever it is, but I don't know. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's got screencasts. We'll be all right. It's also looking free and cool. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Also, like the user interface on these things. I mean, the Kindle's got it right with the directly downloading wherever you are, as long as there's Wi-Fi going on.
Yeah, Apple, take note.
Yeah, podcast downloading a little weak. Actually, Sony's ebook reader supposedly has a better screen than the Kindle, and I think that is true. But also, Sony's got a new Walkman that actually does the podcast downloading properly. It doesn't have much else going for it. It needs to be a phone. But finally there is a device with the proper podcast support. Hooray! Took long enough.
I mean, beyond that, there's a lot of little things that would be cool, like Netflix has you rate things you read and you can recommend things to other people. I'd like a built-in network for that. Like the Kindle could probably
Amazon reviews are on there.
Yeah, but I use the Kindle, and I feel like it could be done in a better way to encourage people to review books quickly and recommend books to their friends, and you can subscribe to the recommendations.
Yeah, Amazon reviews is not as slick as Netflix with the reviewing and recommending and sharing and suggesting.
Plus, that would
Amazon's suggestion engine is more, because remember, Netflix doesn't care about which ones you pick. They get your money anyway, right? So they want you to help find things that you'll like. That way you'll stay subscribed. Amazon, right, wants you to buy shit. So their recommender is trying to find things that you are likely to buy, not things that your friends like or things like that, because that's not going to make you buy more. Well, it might, but,
Have we exhausted this topic?
Possibly.
All right. My plan is I'm probably going to wait until the Kindle 2 is out and I can hold one.
I hope they make sort of like a Kindle Mini, as in, iPod Mini, because I've always been more a fan of the mini nano type things than like the big ones, So if there was
it's got a 4-inch screen.
I want it to be the size, right? Like the screen should be the size of a, mass market trade paperback. The runs they have now, the page is almost as big as like the page in a normal hardcover book. It's kind of big. I'd rather have a smaller one, that's like, this size. No one can see this. But, the size of like a piece of paper from the Hyperion book. That size is how big I want it to be. That way I can just sort of toss it in. The Kindle's pretty small, but we can go smaller, people.
Of course, it has to be as indestructible as a Nintendo product.
Oh, of course. I mean, like, books freaking beat the shit out of them all over the place, and they just keep on trucking. Oh, that's another thing, though, right? The one thing with the DRM that does bother me is...
You can't just give books to other people when you're done with them. There's no secondary market.
You can't lend, right? I mean, right now I buy a book, everyone I know can read that book. With the DRM... Not so much. So there needs to be something to do with that, right? I should be able to pass a book around.
Well, that's the problem with DRM is that companies realize that as there's so much media out there, the secondhand sale problem is becoming increasingly difficult to deal with because, like, I don't buy new books that often anymore because I'll go to like the Strand, which has every book I want to read ever for like $4.
Well, more books than you can read ever.
Yeah, but any book I want that was written, other than books that just came out today, I can buy for like nothing at a used bookstore pretty handily.
Yep.
And video games, books, music, everyone's having this problem, and they're using the technological solution of digital distribution with DRM. Thus, effectively, in the end, we're going to no longer have the right of first sale for any of our media, and I don't know how I feel about that, and I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, what they are doing is they're putting in danger right? The continued existence of culture. I mean, like, it's a big problem is when you're researching old ancient shit is that their stone tablets, they didn't really make it, and their papyrus really fucking didn't make it. We don't have the papyrus, so now we don't know about them, right?
There needs...
in the future, maybe our books will make it because we sort of put them in a safe place, and we know how to preserve them, and maybe some other things will make it. DRM stuff ain't gonna make it to tomorrow if fucking someone turns the DRM server off. So you're basically if you put some some song out into the world and the only form it's in is this DRM form, that song might not be here. It's gonna be lost.
Make a requirement. Anything that will be distributed with digital rights management must be submitted to, say, the Library of Congress and kept there and then it will be released to the public the moment the copyright expires.
In a non-DRM way.
Yes, and archived there, otherwise forever. And then
the Library of Congress should just put every single piece of material it has that is not copyrighted just online for free for everyone in the U.S.
Of course, you realize what that will do is bring to full fruition the issue that I've been talking about for a long time that someday is going to destroy our current idea of the media market. The competition of the past with the present.
Yep. If we actually, that's the real, I'm beginning to think that's the real reason they're extending copyright, because it's not, oh no, Elvis will enter public domain and then we won't be able to make money off Elvis anymore. It's, oh shit, all the books from the 50s are now free. No one will have any reason to buy a new book because they can just read all the books from the 50s, and now there are enough books available and enough music available for free. No one cares about new stuff anymore. And then the 60s stuff will be free. Who cares? They don't care that. I mean, they're making a lot of money off Beatles music, but they care more about the fact that, oh shit, now everyone just listens to Beatles music for free.
And remember,
no one cares about the new music.
It becomes, it gets bigger and bigger because more media is created. It keeps getting worse. Every day there will be more competition than there ever was before.
Yep. So why is anyone going to buy music ever? All the music from the 80s and previously, as we go on in the decades.
Now, you might say, look at movies that someone might argue that modern movies do things that old movies couldn't do. Yes, but all media hit a terminal point where the technology cannot make them better. The only thing that can make them better is writing them better. And in the longest term, if we go all Asimovian, the last question is that eventually everything will be written. Statistically, every combination...
Monkeys and typewriters.
Yes.
Shakespeare comes out eventually. So yeah, then, what do you do when, let's say copyright is we reduce it to 40 years, right? So in 2040, right, every piece of artwork created in the 20th century will be free.
Which is already more media than I could consume in my entire life if I dedicated my life to consuming media.
So why would anyone pay money for a 21st century piece of artwork when they could spend their entire life and be more than happy with everything ever from the 20th century for free? And if they live to 2041, then all the stuff from the year 2000 will become free. And if they live to 2042, everything from 2001 will be free, and so on and so forth. So every year, this year's worth of stuff will become free. And without creating a new medium for artwork, such as the Feelies or something like that, you got trouble.
Now, I don't know what to do about that, and that's not the topic of the show, so I suppose we'll end it there.
Yeah, I gotta eat something.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.